What I feel for you, the
Hello, everybody. It's Daphne here at Laura Entertainment. I am sitting down today with legendary Marcus Aurelius. How you doing?
I am excellent, by the way. I'm just I'm over the moon with this. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Daphne. I really appreciate
So, what made you
it.
want to become a film director? What got you into the industry?
Well, I'm an actor by trade. I just love acting. And I've always, ever since I was a little kid, because I remember as far as back as I could remember, I wanted to be an architect. But then one day, I was a Cub Scout, and we were doing some type of play, and I had to do something in this play, and then I had to dress up as like this fat girl who had to come in and do this scene, and I had everybody on the floor laughing hysterically, and then I was like, wow, this is really nice. And I remember um, all my friends coming up to me the next day in school saying, man, that was great, that was the best. But I never really knew that it was an art because I grew up in the mean streets of Miami, Florida, in a place called Overtown, Miami, which was a newly historically uh, newly historic land site where newly freed slaves migrated down to Miami, Florida, and they were just straight off the fields. Matter of fact, I remember as a kid, I actually had to work in the fields, not as a slave. I got paid. I think it was something like 5 cents, 2 cents for the whole day. But we were newly freed slaves, and they had the first municipality, and it was Overtown, Miami. So, and that's where I grew up. So it was a long way in my mind from Miami to being able to go to Hollywood and be an actor. That was I totally that was just something you just could not foresee,
Yeah.
especially at my early age. So I wanted to be an architect. I was going to concentrate on that prior to that, but then after I got hit with the bug, and then someone said, "Hey, you could do this as a career," and I was like, "What? What's a career?" So that's how the whole thing. And then I started acting, and I started doing plays, and I was doing everything. I didn't. It didn't matter what kind of play it was. I would do. I remember even doing like Shakespeare, and I remember doing all this stuff. I couldn't really understand Shakespeare, so I used to get up there and just mouth the words. I had a great memory. I would get up there and do the whole scene, and people would say, "Wow, that was great," and I wouldn't even know what I had just said. I'd be like, "Yeah, oh yeah." People would ask me questions. What do you think about this? I was like, do y'all have any popcorn?" you know. So it was like that.
Can you still draw?
Draw like artistry
Yeah.
style. Yeah. I can still draw, but I'm not as good as even when I first started my first architectural class, I mean, there was really no drawing to it. It was just all a bunch of straight lines and rulers and stuff. And it came down to math and, really math and straight lines. So it was like, there was nothing exciting about it. And I remember thinking, oh man, this is going to be boring. It sounds great though, an architect. But then when you get into the root of it, it was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. So when I got hit with
Not
the acting
draw.
bug, oh, do you? You
Hell
draw?
no. I cannot draw. I tell everybody my daughter is the artist. I'm like, I can draw stick people and I can draw balloons and math. I hate math. So that career would have never worked out for me.
Yeah. Well, so it didn't work out for me either. But I love drama, and then when I got into drama, I was doing it, and then I had become so well known for it that even in elementary school, there would be teachers that would come from other schools and say, "Hey, I heard about the student. Da 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 da. Can you do something for my class?" And so I used to travel around Miami at the local schools, and we used to do plays. And we used to do them in this Scope magazine. There used to be a magazine that we used to get called Scope, and inside Scope there was always some little small little play that you would do, and then they would go in there and they would cast me as the lead, and then they put a bunch of other people around me, and then we would go in from different schools and stuff and do little short plays, just long enough for like about less than an hour for an assembly, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how I became a lot of, a lot of the notoriety. And then that's how I started.
So what's the favorite movie that you have actually filmed so far?
That I filmed
Mhm.
as an actor or a director, because
Either.
my favorite movie that I did as an actor was I did this small film for Roger Corman, and it was my very first starring role. And I had done a lot of films up until that point, but when I got to this film, it's a film called Full Contact, and they were looking for the lead actor. And I was still doing a lot of little plays around LA. I was doing commercials. I was doing little small bit parts and stuff. So I went in to read for this director, Rick Jacobson, and he was doing this film for Roger Corman, and it was for the lead. And it's funny because I used to go on these auditions and I would run into people who would later become big stars, but at the time we were all really unknown.
Yeah.
And I went in there. Michael Jai White had came out. He was dressed as a character. I didn't. We had. I knew Michael a couple of times. We had done a few films together and stuff. So I didn't know he was in there for the lead though. But I went in to read for the lead, and then I went in and I would read it, and then the director said, "Okay, here's the script. You got it." I was like, "I got what?" He said, You got the role." And I was like, "You got all these people sitting in standing out there waiting to read." He goes, "Don't need them. I've already read everybody. You're the first person that came in that got what I was doing." And I was like, "Okay." So he went out there. He still read everybody, and he was like, "Thank you. Be in touch." And because I was thinking, is he joking with me? Is he serious? So he gave me the script, and I remember when we went to our first table read, we were sitting around all the actors, and we read me, Jerry Trimble, a whole bunch of actors, and we were sitting reading the script, and he was like, "Marcus, when you gonna open your script?" I was like, "For what?" He was like, "Cause we're doing the table read," and I was like, he goes, "Where's your script?" I was like, "I got the whole thing memorized," and he was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah," and when it got to my part, I started going through everything, and everybody at the table read was looking at me like they were trying to keep up with me because I was going through the characters and I was, my character, and I was right on, and they were always late because they were looking at me going, trying to figure out, wow, he memorized the whole script. So, and what it did is it always let me know that you always had to be prepared. I was just listening to T.I., the actor T.I. I just saw him on, he was talking on, I think it was on TMZ. He said that he went to the table read and everybody was doing it and he got to him and Morgan Freeman was on the film with him. And Morgan Freeman stopped the whole thing and said, "Hey, dude, you're not ready. He needs to get out of here. He needs to be fired. You got to be ready." And that's one of the things that I've found, that a lot of people want to be an actor. They don't want to be an actor. They want to be stars. And that's the issue. That's the challenge. And you're like, dude, no, you got to come, you got to be prepared. You got to have some real talent. So that's one of the things. You just have to be prepared no matter what you do. I don't care. I've done a lot of jobs in my lifetime. I was a janitor, I was a cook. No matter what I did, I was always the best at it. Even when I was a limo driver, I was the best limo driver. And they would say, "Oh, we want Mr. Daniels." I remember I drove Eddie Murphy, and they were like, at one point, they wanted me to come and work for them. And I said, "Dude, I'm not really a driver. I'm an actor who drives. I'm not a driver who." What did Eddie say? "No, you're a driver who acts." I said, "No, I'm an actor who drives, but I'm gonna be an actor. That's what I want to do." And Mr. Murphy was the perfect gentleman. I mean, really, really, I have nothing but praise for that. I love that guy. He is so he's why he's where he's at because of who he is. He's a really, really solid person. Even before you get to the comedian part, he's a real human being, a real gentleman. I took a lot of, I got a few pointers from him. He was a very, very good person. So
I
that was
definitely,
that was
I like Eddie Murphy. He is funny. Some of the stuff I watched Coming to America last week, and even though that movie is like older, it's still, you still crack up at the movie.
It's he's just the. I'm sorry, I'm turning that off.
You're fine.
That's my I'm diabetic, so I got one of those things in my arm that
Oh,
alarms when it gets too high or too low or it loses the signal on your arm. So I just turned it off. It just lost the signal, but that's okay.
well, we
But
want to
anyway.
make sure you're okay.
Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay.
So, but anyway, but that's what it was. He's just a really real good gentleman. So
So you drove a limo before you got as far as you did
oh
in the film
yeah,
industry.
yeah, I did. You know, when I first got out of the military, I had to get a job. And I was doing these little jobs, working as an actor and stuff. So I didn't really want to concentrate on nothing else. And I drove a limousine, and I drove everybody. You name it, I drove them. I drove from Quincy Jones to Michael Jackson to Eddie Murphy to Scorpions to just everybody that was anybody in the industry. I drove Tom Cruise. I drove George Michaels. I drove just so many people. You know, I was just really quiet and just listening to how they talk. You know, and the things that they would say. I mean, I had some great. I mean, I was on there with the Grateful Dead. I was on there with AC/DC. Somebody had called me a derogatory, the N word, and the guys from AC/DC, stop the fucking car, stop it. And they jumped out of the car. And he goes, you don't talk to my driver like that. Da 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 da. He's a human being. Da 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 da. And I was like,
Yeah.
those guys from AC/DC, him and the little short guy with the that plays the guitar and the guy with the hat,
Yeah.
it was so good. And then my biggest, I guess I got a lot of great friendship. Duff from Guns N' Roses, we became very, very good friends. I used to go to Duff's house all the time. And then Metallica, they came and they said, we don't want nobody to drive us but Marcus. And I drove Prince. Prince was a little weird. You know, I didn't have anything against him, but I didn't want to drive Prince. And then they called me and they told me they were swapping me out because Prince didn't like my car. And I was like, okay, good. And he goes, no, he wants you to drive him, but he just wants you to change your car. And I was like, oh, dude, come on, nah, you know. Prince was very, very cordial, very nice. Very first thing he said to me, he said, anybody ever tell you look like Muhammad Ali? And I said to him, I said, yeah, I got that a lot. And then that was a weird, he was weird. That was a weird drive because I just picked him.
Actually noticed that in the picture that I had grabbed. For a second, I was like, did he get his picture taken with Muhammad? I was looking
Yes.
at it real hard. I was like, wait a minute.
I got the greatest Muhammad Ali story. It's a little lengthy, but basically we just went up to Ali's house and told him we were from Miami. And he said, his people said, who are you? And we said, well, it's Marcus and Kevin, my brother, Kevin Wilson. Flips, my other brother. We went up there and we Marcus and Kevin from Miami. And the guy said, so where y'all were? We didn't use Pop's name or nothing. We just went there and he said, come on in. Just like that. And we ended up spending the whole day with him. He was it was something right out of a dream with Muhammad Ali. He was showing us tricks and stuff. And so later on, we were like, well, hey, listen, champ, we got to go, man, because we hadn't eaten. We were hungry. And the champ said, hey, don't worry about it. This is when he had a little bit of his faculty. He ordered food and a whole smorgasbord of food, and we had to stay there. We got there at his house probably around 11, 12 in the afternoon. We didn't even leave till about like maybe 10 at night.
Wow.
So we spent the whole day with the champ. He was incredible. I really wish I could get into it with you about it, but it was little stuff like that you learn from people. You just like, wow.
I love people who are down to earth. I mean, that's how I am. And I was told that about Michael Jackson, that he's grounded too, because I manage it's one of his cousins, actually. He's a singer. And he was telling me about him. And I guess he helped him with a song, is what he had told me. And I was like, I like people who are down to earth, where they're just like, come on over, we'll have a couple drinks, couple meals, hang out. But then some, like we were talking about earlier, some people lose focus of that. And like you said about the guy speaking to you the way he did when, you were driving a limo. Yeah. I mean, you're a human being. People forget where they come from. And
they do. They do. And I'm going to tell you something. I've had a storybook life because I was born in Miami, over town, and then we moved to a place called Launchmont Gardens, which was a housing projects in Florida,
Yeah.
and that's where I met my future brothers, David and Kevin Wilson, who happened to be the sons of Flip Wilson. At the time, I didn't really know. I mean, I knew who Flip Wilson was, but I had no, you see these guys, you don't know that that's his sons and stuff,
Yeah.
So, but we all became good friends. And what happened was every summer they would leave and go be with their father in LA, and I would be in Miami. And then we had gotten so close that this one particular summer when they left like I think on a Wednesday to go be with their father for the summer. And then I'll never forget it was a Saturday morning and the phone rings. And this was in 1970, I think it was. And I answered the phone. We had that black locker phone with the rotary dial and stuff. And it was on connected to a long line that went through all out the house. There was no cordless or none of that crap or none of that. And so I answered the phone and he said, Marcus. And I said, David? He said, yeah, man, yeah. He said, I said, y'all back? He said, no, man. I said, well, where you at? He said, I'm in California. I'm calling you from California. That was like, what? That was like, probably at that time, it was about $10 a minute in 1970, 69, 70. That was a lot of money. I was like, you calling me from where? And I'm looking at the phone, and he's like, I'm calling you from California. He said, hey, hold on. Somebody wants to talk to you. And this guy gets on the phone and he goes, hey, buddy, my kids have been talking about you, my daughters and my sons, and they're crying and they're talking about you. And I just wanted to know, who are you? And I said, now, now I hear him and I have an idea, but it hasn't really hit me yet. And so he said, well, this is Mr. Flip Wilson. And he said to me, he said, hey, I just want to know, have you ever been to California? And I said, well, I ain't never been nowhere. He said, is your parents there? And I was like, yeah. And he said, who's there? And I said, my mom. I live with my mom. And he said, yeah, let me speak to your mom. So I go, okay. So I take the phone, and my mom was giving my other brothers and sisters a bath. And I walked into the bathroom with the phone, and I said, Mama, Mama, Mama. And she goes, what, boy? Like that. And I'm like, Mama, it's Flip Wilson. She was like, what? She snatched the phone. She said, who is this? And then you can hear him on the phone. And then she hung up the phone and she was like, boy, ain't no goddamn Flip Wilson. No, but don't be playing with. Then my mom was, she was like that. And I was like, that was him. And she was like, I ain't got time to play. I'm in here trying to get you. You got to come in here and take a bath. You need to wash the dishes because it was a Saturday morning, and it was like, and then the phone rang again, and I picked up the phone again. I said, hello. And he said, hey, what happened? I said, the phone, my mama hung up on you. He said, let me speak to her again, like that. So I give the phone to my mom a second time, and you could see her face just morph from what to she started realizing, because back then the Flip Wilson show only came on once a week. And every time it would come on, everybody would be outside playing. And then we would run into the house, watch the show, and then we would come out and everybody would talk about the show and who's on and, and all the jokes that he told and stuff like that, because we were poor. And the only time we entertained ourselves, we used to do this thing called the dozens, where we sat around and told jokes and cracked on each other. That was the most fun you could ever have. But anyway, he talked to my mom, and it was a huge, big thing. And he said, is it okay if he come to LA? And my mom said, I ain't got no money.
You're gonna have to come get him.
And he said, no, no, ma'am, you don't have to worry about that. And so the deal was that I was supposed to go to the airport and go to the counter and tell the lady at the counter behind the ticket that I was Flip Wilson's son, and they were going to put me on a flight to come to LA. So by the time I actually started, this was like 11 o'clock. The flight was leaving at about 4 o'clock. So I had to be to the airport about 2:30, 3 o'clock. And I didn't even have a ride. We didn't have our car. So we started talking to a couple of people, and we asked some friends, and these people said that they would give us a ride, and all we had to do is give gas money. We had no money for gas, but Pops had told my mom that he was going to send us some money and stuff, to pay for everything. So, and I'll never forget it. We all pulled. By the time it was time for me to leave, it was a caravan of cars. It's about 20 cars from the projects on the way to the airport. And back then, when we drove up to the curb, you could just get out of the car and leave your car on the curb and just go in.
Yeah.
Back then, that was in 1970. Not like it is now. So I remember I walked in and all these people were standing behind me. It was like, I kid you not, it was like probably like 100 people from the projects all in. I went walking up to the counter, and I had my clothes and everything. I had a bag. I didn't even have a suitcase. I just had a bag of clothes, like a hefty bag. And the lady was like, she said, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'm Flip Wilson's son. And he told me to come to the counter, and that there was a flight leaving for me to come to California. And she looked at me, and she looked at the people behind me, and she was like, and then she waved to another agent, and the agent came over, and she said, what's going on? She goes, this is Flip Wilson's son. He said that Flip Wilson called him and told him that there's a flight leaving, and that he's got a flight that's going to be leaving, da 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 da. And I was standing there looking, and then the lady said, what's your name? And I said, Marcus Daniels. She said, it's not Wilson. I said, no, ma'am, it's Daniels. So she says, okay. So she's going searching, and she's going searching. Then the other lady's searching. They're both searching, and they're going typing it up. And she said, I'm sorry, I don't see your name. And so I said, really? I said, but he told me to come here. She said, well, can you call him? No, nobody can call. I didn't have no, even if I had the number, no, I can't call him. I don't know his number. I don't know nothing. So she said, I'm sorry, sir. And so they all frantically looked. So about probably after 15 minutes, 15 long minutes, she says, I'm sorry. So I started walking back, and everybody was there going, oh man, it was a lie. Y'all got us here. It was a lie. And we were walking. And then the phone rang. I could hear the phone ring, and she picked it up. And then she goes, yeah, no, he's here. She says, excuse me, little boy. And she said, she's waving at me to come in like that. And I turn around, and everybody goes, DeMarcus, they calling you. And because I was crying, I turned around, and the lady said, come. And so I go up there, and then as soon as I get there, this guy drives up in a golf cart, and he said, get on the cart. I'll have the ticket by the time you get to the gate. And I jump on the cart. I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to nobody. It just took me off with me. And when I got there, we're running down the tunnel to the plane, and the plane had already backed out.
Oh gosh.
It had backed out, and I'm sitting there, and then the lady waved for the flight to come back, and it comes back, opens the gate, and I go in there, and I'm the only person on the plane. Everybody else is sitting in the back. But what it was is I was the only person in first class. There was nobody else. So I had like these 6 flight attendants, and back then they'll give you what you want.
Yeah.
They were bringing me steaks and shrimps, and I didn't eat that kind of stuff. I wanted like grits. I was like, y'all ain't got no grits.
On the plane. Excuse me.
Right.
Can you fry that up for me?
Right. So on the whole flight, we get there and we land, and when I'm coming off the plane for the first time in LA, I'm looking down the thing where you get off the plane, the long tunnel, and all I see is Asians, or what we used to call Chinese people. I see all these Chinese people. I don't see no blacks. I don't see no whites. Just all Chinese people. Then all of a sudden, the head sticks his head around the corner and says, Marcus. And it's David. He said, come on, man, hurry up, man. They're attacking Pops. And so I'm running through the airport with David, and we're all running, and I get there, and Pops is there. He's got on no shirt. This woman snatched off his shirt and everything like that. He says, come on, we got to go. So we're all running through the airport. I'm running through the airport, and people are snatching and grabbing at him, and then they're snatching and grabbing at me, and I'm like, I just came from the projects, right? So we get to the car, because Pops left his car at the curb, and we get there, and the police are there and everybody like that, and they're going to give us an escort so we can leave out of the escort, because there's a bunch of cars, and they're asking for autographs, and Pops is signing autographs, and they take my bag of clothes, and they throw it in the trunk, and we get in the car, and it's a convertible Rolls Royce, right? And so we're driving down the streets, and the first thing I noticed that it was cold. Now it's the summertime, and in Florida it's hot, but this is the first time you could feel that it was really, really cold. And we get in the car and we're driving down the street, and David said to me, he said, "Champ," because that's what they used to call me, Champ. Champ, what do you think about this car? And I looked around at it, and I said, "It's nice. It ain't no Cadillac, but it's okay." And I'm riding in a convertible Rolls Royce, and Pops dies laughing. And I'm trying to figure out why everybody's laughing. That was my mindset. You know, it ain't no Cadillac. But, and Pops was laughing so hard. He was just laughing. It was just, and then you got to understand that I literally went from rags to riches because I'm living in this house, this $5 million mansion on the beach in Malibu the next day. And then about a week later, we're walking down the beach and I see Michael Jackson. Then all of a sudden we befriend each other. We became good friends. And I would call my mom and tell them what was happening. Nobody believed me. No, they, boy, shut up, click. Really? So that was it.
All right, then I'll call you back.
Yeah. They would hang up on me. I would call and tell them I was with Michael Jackson. They were like, that ain't no damn Michael Jackson. Hang up. And they hang up. Really? It was like that.
Crazy. Okay, so describe what movie changed your life.
Oh, it wasn't just one. I grew up next to the Capitol Theater. And the Capitol Theater it was like probably less than 50 yards from my house. Because I lived in these two apartment complexes called Goodbread Alley in Overtown. And in the middle, on the side, was the Capitol Theater. You could literally throw a rock from my front door and hit the Capitol. But we used to, when we left to go to school, we would walk down off the apartments and walk through this alleyway, and the Capitol was on the right-hand side, was one of the buildings. And I used to walk right in front of the Capitol Theater. And so I used to go in there every day. And at the time, a movie was like, I think it was like 10 cents. And I remember when it went up to 15 cents, everybody lost their mind. What? 15 cents? That was a lot of money back then. And it was tough for me. You know, I used to have to throw papers and stuff like that to raise the money because we were poor. We didn't have any money, you know. So I remember the guy was cleaning the front. And so I came by there and I started helping him clean the front, you know, just helping him clean the popcorn and the French fries. That was the big thing. Popcorn wasn't as popular as French fries at the Capitol Theater. French fries and a Coke was the big thing. So I was helping him clean the French fries. And then the manager saw me. He said, "You the same young boy that be in here every day watching the movie?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. And I was wondering if you can just give me a discount. Instead of paying 15 cents, maybe I could pay 5 cents or whatever." And she said, "I tell you what, I'll let you come in here for free if you would just help clean up." And I said, "Okay." So I started getting so good at it being a janitor that she said to me, "Well, if you can come in here in the morning and clean up, and then when you came from school, brought the keys back," and they gave me the keys. I had the keys to the theater. Yeah, I was like maybe 8 years old. I had the keys. I used to go in there in the early in the morning, sweep up the popcorn and the French fries out the seats, put it in a big old trash can, lock the theater back up, and then go to school. And then when I come home from school, they would let me and whoever I wanted to bring in the movie theater with me, we would all get in for free. So I saw every movie from Psycho to um, all those movies, Skull on the Guillotine, Shaft, all these old movies that are now. I can't believe. I remember when Night of the Living Dead first came out. Do you know they had a registered nurse in the lobby for people that were falling out? People
Because
that
of
were
that
fainting.
movie?
Yeah, people were fainting, and they had a registered nurse in the lobby taking care of people. And I used to have to go to the nurse and, "Do you want anything to drink?" Da 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 da. And they'd be sitting there, and it was kind of cool because it was a big thing because she was white. The nurse was white, and she would be taking care of everybody. So we all had to be nice and treat her nice too. But all those movies, Skull on the Guillotine and Breakfast at Tiffany's and Hamlet and Robin Hood and all those old black and white movies, The Dirty Dozen, and I saw all those movies firsthand, everything.
So why were they calling out? I mean, did they think the zombies were actually going to come to life and get
Oh
them?
yeah,
Is
oh
that what
yeah,
it was?
yeah.
Oh
People
my
eating.
gosh.
That was people eating people for the first time on screen. Nobody had ever done that. Nobody. And there would people be fainting, there would people be vomiting, and there were people coming, they would be in the lobby and the nurse would be there taking their temperature. Yeah. That was a big thing. That was huge.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had a lot of different movies, mean different things. One of the greatest movies that I always loved, one of the greatest movies that as a filmmaker, as an actor or anything, that really had a profound effect on me was The Greatest Story Ever Told. That was just because at the time I didn't know anything about. My grandmother introduced me to God and what it was like. And then when I remember watching that movie for the first time, how that Max von Sydow was like, I thought it was one of the greatest roles that he's ever done. So
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite movies of all time. My top three would be The Greatest Story Ever Told. The second movie would be uh, Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans really didn't get its just due, but there was a scene in Remember the Titans where it's like they just tore it out of my life and threw it up on screen. That scene where the black guy goes into this white neighborhood for the first time, and then the cops drive up, and the cop says, "Hell of a game you guys did last night." Because that literally happened to me like that. When I was a kid, I went, a lot of my friends were white and they would invite me to the neighborhood. I was like, man, I'm not going. No, man. In Florida, that was a big thing, in Miami. I mean, I remember the Green Book. There were places that you could not go. If you were leaving Florida going to like Georgia or Alabama, they gave you the Green Book. And you knew where you could stop and where you couldn't stop, where you dare not stop. And there were certain areas and neighborhoods that you knew you couldn't go there. As a matter of fact, where I lived in Launchmont Gardens, we used to have to cross a bridge to go to school. And the bridge separated the white neighborhood from the black neighborhood. And they used to lock the gate every night. As a matter of fact, I got a big scar in my heart because Flip, Kevin and David, they lived on the other side, and I was crossing that bridge one night, and it had been raining, and I slipped, and the thing pierced my heart right here. The scar, big scar right here in my chest. It's still there, and that gate is still there. They still lock it at night, separating the black side, even though everybody on the other side now are affluent blacks also, but they still got that same gate
Now?
right now in Launchmont Gardens in Miami, Florida. Yeah,
Somebody
you
needs to
go
go
there.
tear that down.
It ain't gonna tear it down. It's just it's almost like it's like a part of it's a mentality thing. Everybody knows because they used to keep us out of there after sundown. They locked that gate, and the whites in El Patel, they didn't want none of them black folks from the projects coming into their neighborhood. And it's still there now. We used to at Horace Mann Junior High School, we used to walk across that bridge every day. And if you didn't want to walk across the bridge, you had to walk all the way around the canal to come back and get to the project. That was a long walk too. So, but
Good,
after I got stabbed in the heart, I used to make the long walk around because I couldn't take two of them stabs. So
good Lord. So, what kind of advice do you have for kids today or even adults today that are like aspiring, to be in this industry,
I
filmmaking?
say do do your homework because I meet a lot of people. Like I was listening, I even saw Will Smith talking about everybody. They sit in the movie theater and they say, "Oh man, I could do that. Oh yeah, I can. I mean, I could go up there. I could do that." And it's much more to it than that. They fail to realize that you're probably on set. It's probably 3 o'clock in the morning. It's cold, and you're miserable. You haven't had any sleep, and you got to go on camera, and it's got to be like just 1 second from the last time you were there. You have to be prepared. You have to go on that set, and you have to. The thing I love about directing writing and directing, and I see it differently now as an actor, because as an actor, I was just a brush. I was the if an artist was painting a mural or a picture, whatever, I was that brush that he was sticking to that paint and take the paint and point. I'm not that no more. I'm the artist now. I'm the director. I'm the producer. I'm the writer who puts the whole composite together. And it's a feeling of being able to almost create. It's almost like, no disrespect to God, but it's almost like being God or being like a God, because you're taking an idea and you're writing words and you're creating a situation, and then you have to breathe life into those words and lift those words up off a script and bring it to real life so that people can see what your idea was and stuff like that. It's almost like I sit in, sometimes I sit in and I see what, like I write a scene and I see it for the first time, or I see it coming up off the screen, I mean off the page, and it going to the screen, and and then I'm in the editing room, and I'm creating what I felt, what I feel about it, and contributing all. That's why I know why. I remember when I was coming up, and a lot of people said, "Oh, I want to be in control. I want to do this," because all it takes is one or two misrepresentations of the idea. Then it's not your idea anymore, and it's not, the whole thing doesn't come across, and then the whole thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's really important to maintain that control and maintain the idea, to maintain the integrity throughout the whole piece, so the original composition could come to full fruition. And that's what I loved about Almost Related, because pretty much everything in there was my idea, and I literally brought it to life basically on my own. I had some insight and I had some help, but the gist of it originally came from me. I remember we were sitting in the rehearsal. No, we were getting ready to shoot the scene where I go into the supermarket. We were in Thailand. I was getting ready to shoot that scene in Thailand where I go into the mini mart and I have a shootout while I'm eating a hamburger. And I really liked that scene. But I remember one of the actors saying to me, "Just think, Marcus, all these people that are here working on this are here because of you. You brought all these people together." And I was like, I never really saw it like that. I just saw it a day, okay, we got to go, we got to do this scene, we got to do that scene. But then you don't want to get too caught up in it because you don't want to lose, you don't want to become big headed or anything like that. So it's, the thing about directing the film, producing, directing, writing, producing, directing, probably about, I don't know, probably halfway through, I realized that I had bitten off much more than I could chew, but
Mm.
I didn't have the luxury of stopping. So I had to marshal on. And by the end of it, I had a different, profound ideology, knowing that you don't have to wear all the hats, but you have to just be able to control them, you
Yeah.
know. So, and that's how I became a director, because I just wanted to act. I had been doing so many films. I've done about more than 40 films. And out of those 40 films as an actor, I've either starred or co starred in more than half of them. But then jobs dried up, and I would go on these auditions, and you go in to read for a black film, and everybody was there. All these big stars, and even young up and coming stars. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many auditions I went on, and I was up against. It came down to me and Cuba Gooding Jr. We were up for Tuskegee Airmen together, and I was doing another film, and they called me, and I had to go in between takes. They let me leave the set to go over and do the audition for Tuskegee Airmen. They got down to the sixth interview. I think that was Jackie Brown, was the casting director, and I was like, "Man, I'm up against Cuba Gooding Jr." And she said to me, "Hey, you got yourself called back 6 times, and you're up against Cuba Gooding Jr. There's a reason why you're still here, you know." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right. You're right." So she was like, "So, that lets you know that your talent is different. You're on a different level." And I read for the movie. I remember they came up with this movie, Boys in the Hood, and they said they gave me this. They gave me the sides, just a few pages,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, you're going to be reading for this casting director. And I read for the casting director. I read a bunch of times. And then they brought me in and they said, well, you're reading for the director today and the producer. And I walked in and I'll never forget, it was a little small, skinny guy, John Singleton. And I looked at the white guy and there's Steve Nicolai. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, which one's the director? And John came up to me. He said, hey, man, just read it. Be cool, da da da. I'm John Singleton. I'm the director. And I was like, oh, okay. And so we sat and I knocked it out. And then they called me and they gave me the script and they said, um, we're waiting to see because we made an offer to somebody and we're waiting to see how it turns out. And then I went back again to read and I really got tired of going back. And I said, hey man, I'm not coming back in to read for that again. You guys know what I can do. So John called me and asked me to come in and he sat down with me, John Singleton. He said, man, listen, I offered the role to Ice Cube. And at the time, I didn't know who Ice Cube was. He was some rapper. I didn't know who he was. And
Mm-hmm.
he said, but Ice Cube hasn't accepted. He said, so if Ice Cube don't come for the table read through this weekend, the role is yours. Even, he gave me another script. He gave me an updated script. And so I was waiting on pins and needles, and then they called and told me that Ice Cube had came, so he's gonna get the role. But they wrote me this really, really nice letter saying that even though they gave the role to Ice Cube, how my performance made their decision very difficult. I really appreciated that letter from him and
Yeah.
from Steve Nicolai. I still have the letter. I still have my sides. And John and I had become good friends after that. I used to see him from time to time. And I would say, dude, why? Okay, Boys in the Hood ain't the only movie you done. Why can't you call me for these other films? And he said, Marcus, it's literally you have to be right there in my face because every film that I do, I've got like 100. I've got pressure from 100 different people for every little role, even the smallest role. And he said, "Man, I just forget." And I was like, "Oh, there ain't no damn reason." But he remembered me. He every time I saw him, I would see him at a gas station. He's like, "Marcus Aurelius," and I turn around, John. He says, "Dude, you never know how close you came to being Doughboy." So got a
Wow.
lot of nice little stories like that.
So what? Okay, I asked everybody this, and I ask them every time I go to a rap. Do you have a personal motto that you live your life by, or that it's just your motto?
I do, and I'm trying to recall what it is. My whole thing is you have to be who you really are. No matter what the situation is, you have to be who you are. And I know some of the questions that you asked me, and you said like who was important in your life, and it's different stages of my life, different important people. The very first stage was my grandmother by far, Grace Robinson, whom I think about this woman every day of my life, to be honest. And then after that was Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson taught me not just how to be a man, but how to be a black man and how to conduct myself and uh, how to be the best individual you can be. I remember my first lesson with Pops was we were on a flight from Miami to LA, and I thought I was clean. I was dressed, I was clean. I had just gotten a little money from him. Not much. I only had like maybe $130, but that was whew, that, that was you couldn't tell me nothing. I was I was just as rich as he was. And we were sitting there and he was looking at my shoes and I had just bought these shoes. They cost me $17 and they were patent leather black and real leather black. And he had on these uh, jeans and he had on these ostrich boots. And so I said to him, I said, how much you pay for your boots? And he said, oh, these were $100. And $100 was unheard of, you know. And I said, you spent $100 on that? He said, yeah. And I said, and how much you think I paid for my shoes? And he said, how much? I said, I spent $10 for these shoes. And you paid $100 for your box. So he was sitting there, he was smiling. And then he said, Marcus, let me ask you a question. And I said, Go ahead, sir. He said, if you could buy 10 pair of pants, let's say some jeans, you could buy 10 pair of jeans for $10 each, or one pair of jeans for $100. Which one would you buy? I was like, what? That's easy, man. I'd pay $10. Do you get 10 pairs for $100 and one pair? He said, yeah, that one pair that you buy for $100 will last longer than all 10 of those pairs of jeans you had. And then when he said that, I started to realize that the stuff that I used to buy, it was always cool at first, but then they would start tearing and then they would break and then stuff would pop off and buttons would pop off or, whatever. And I started saying, oh my God, you're right. And he said, so what do you think now? I said, I think the thing that I have to think about is how do I get those $100 pair of jeans for $10? And he said, shit, like that. Pops was like, because Pops, two things he told me. I'll never forget one day he was fussing at us, the boys, because he said, hey, if one of y'all mess up, all of y'all mess up. So y'all better look out for each other. One of y'all screw up, all y'all screw up.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in Vegas. And I kept telling the boys, hey, don't go to MGM Grand. We were at the Grand, and they wanted to go to Caesars and gamble. And we weren't old enough to gamble. We were young. And so they would say, hey, we're going over to Caesar's Palace and we're going to gamble. And I was like, dude, y'all can't do that. Y'all going to screw it up. Pop's going to be mad. He going to find out. And they was like, you come in? And I was like, nah, man, I'm staying here. And so the next morning, we sitting there at breakfast and Pop goes, I got a call from Caesar's Palace.
Oh man, they're serious in Vegas. I grew up there and I put a quarter in a slot machine at a young age, and those security guards ran over and they was like, we will take your parents to jail. I'm like, what the hell?
And Pops was appearing at the MGM Grand. Kevin and I was doing the show with Pops at the time.
Wow.
Even at my young age, anyway. So Pop started going off because he thought it was all of us. And I didn't have the nerve to say, well, it wasn't me. So Pops was yelling and he was like, get out of here, da 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 da. And then I was like, and so I turned to him and I said, well, I just want to tell you that even though you're kicking us out, I still love you. And he's like, get out of here. You're trying to just drown me with your love. You're trying to drown me with all this honey. That's all you're doing is just drowning me with honey. And so I looked back and I was crying and I said, well, before you drown, taste it. And then I walked out of the door. And then we were walking to the elevator because he was kicking us out of Vegas. He wouldn't just kick you out of the hotel. He would kick you all the way back to LA and then tell you from LA you're going to Miami. And we were crying and we went to the elevator and he ran out of the suite in his underwear. And he said, hey, come back in here. And we went back in there. He says, okay, just because of what you said, Marcus, I'm going to give you guys one more chance. And he said, I don't know where you come up with these lines, he said to me, but sometimes you say things that just cut right to my heart. And then he was telling us that. And then one day we were having a drink. We were sitting around drinking and stuff like that. I never drank beer or anything like that. I didn't do any of that. Pops would drink a Heineken. The boys would drink like root beer. I didn't like root beer, so I would drink like, lemonade and stuff like that. I couldn't even drink nothing with the beer in it. And we were sitting around and he said to us one day, he said, when I was in Nassau, he went to a witch doctor. And the witch doctor, he was telling the witch doctor that he said, how many children you had? He said, well, I got 2 girls. And he said, and I got 2 boys. And the witch doctor said, no, you have 3 boys. And he said, no, I think you're mistaken. I only have 2 boys. And he said him and the witch doctor went back and forth the whole time he was there. And he told the witch doctor, he said, unless I got a child that I don't know nothing about, he said, well, you have 3 boys. And Pop said, and the very first thing you said to me, Marcus, when you came to the house was, hey, Pop. And he said, that's when he crystallized the point. And this is when he said, I think I'm going to adopt you. This is how the whole thing went down. But here's the thing that really, really hurt me. When Pops was ill and he was about to pass on, he was gonna die. And I was trying to get out there and see him, and because he was sick, he didn't want nobody to see the way he was and the things that he had done. And I was sitting there and I was waiting on him. And then all of a sudden this limo pulls up to where I was staying at the time in Inglewood. And it's Tamara, his daughter. And she comes in and she said, Dad sent me over here to tell you that he loves you. He wants to see you, but he doesn't want you to see him the way he looks. And she said, but he wanted me to tell you that he really wished his son were a fraction of the man that I was. He could never tell me that because he didn't want to tell his sons or make me, he said, but he has always admired the road that I took. Because I used to tell those boys, hey, y'all taking advantage of his situation. You got to you got to create your own situation. Because, I know he said he's going to leave you a bunch of money, but you can't count on that. He may leave it all to the cat. You guys got to get your own stuff going. I used to say that to them all the time. And that's pretty much what he did too, So, but he was, I can't begin to tell you how many times he was so, whew, my God. And can you imagine you went from the projects to living with Flip Wilson and then hanging out with the Jackson 5 every day? It was like, I got so many stories locked up in me, I can't even begin. I just want to tell you one little story, just one. We were hanging out, Michael, every day. We wake up, we would call Jermaine, and Jermaine would call us. What y'all doing? What y'all doing? We just going, y'all coming down here, or we gonna come down there? I said, well, Pops wants to go to the Renaissance Fair, so we're gonna go to the Renaissance Fair. So Michael goes, ooh, I want to go. So Michael comes down to the house. We go down to meet Michael, and we get on the 10 speed, and we're up and down Pacific Coast Highway on 10 speeds. Me, Michael, and Kevin. So we drive down to the house, and then Pop says, we're going to go to the Renaissance Fair. He says it officially. And Mike says he wants to go. And Pop says, hey, I don't mind you going. You have to ask your parents. So Michael gets on the phone and calls Jermaine. Jermaine gets on the phone and calls Mother. And Mother says, well, let me ask Joe. So Joseph Jackson gets on the phone. Yeah, tell Flip that if he wants Michael to go with him, he's got to get security. So I'm like, okay, I'll call you back. So I go to Pops, and I said, he said, what they say? Can Mike come? And I said, well, Joseph, who Mike's dad, Joseph said that Michael can go, but you got to provide security. And Pops says, what? I ain't providing no damn security. If Mike want to go, he can go. But, no, we ain't going to be no security. It's just going to be us. We got 2 limos, the girls going first, and we'll come behind the girls in our limo. And he said, I know Michael's a little star and stuff like that, and there'll be girls there, and it'll be like, ooh, Michael Jackson, And then Pop says, but when they see me, it's all over. So then I called back, and I said, Mr. Jackson, Pop said that Michael can come, but he's not going to provide security. So then Joseph goes, he can't go. So then you can hear Miss Jackson, she says, Joe, let the boy go. You always complaining he ain't got no friends, let the boy go. And so Jermaine was like, he was waiting on the other phone because we had like one phone, but like 6 different lines. You had to do the punch buttons and punch, and Jermaine was on one. And I was telling Jermaine, hold on, your dad's on the other one, and So then finally George said, all right, he could go. So Pops said, So we wanted to go, but we never thought about it. Michael had been at Jermaine's house, but Michael didn't have any clothes. He had clothes to hang out or something, but he didn't have nothing to go out in. And Pops had taken me shopping, and he took all my clothes in the bag and put them and donated them all to charity. Then he had Betsy Kahn, his secretary, took me into Beverly Hills, and they spent $5,700 on a whole new wardrobe, from everything from shoes. And a brand new Toyota at the time was $2,700. That's to let you know how much money he had spent on me. So I had all these clothes. So Michael was like, I ain't got no clothes. So I said, Mike, hey man, come on up in the room. I got something you can wear. And sure enough, even though I was bigger, even then I was bigger than Michael. But Michael went up. He got these navy blue pants that I had that had a drawstring, and Michael tied it up, and then he wore a t-shirt, and he had on a flip hat. So we all go to the Renaissance Fair, and we're all in the fair. We get in the limo, and we get in the car, and then Pops asked us to step out of the car a second because he wanted to talk to somebody by himself first. And so we get out of the car, and we're walking through the Renaissance Fair. We didn't walk away too far, and the girls saw it. It's Michael Jackson. It's Michael Jackson. Da, 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 da. And the girls all. I had never been to the Renaissance Fair, so I didn't know what to expect. But that's when you get there and you see the people walking around like the helmet and all that kind of stuff. I was like, the whole thing was kind of weird to me, And these girls was lining up, and they were like, "Excuse me, do you want a drink?" They were asking Michael, and Michael was like, "I don't drink," because they serve ale in the can and stuff like that. And all these little girls, that's Michael Jackson, that's Michael Jackson. And Pops gets out of the car, and he walks up to us, and this white lady screams, "Ah! Oh my God, it's Flip, it's Flip, it's Flip, it's Flip." And the woman runs up to Michael and gives Michael her camera and says, "Will you take a picture of me and Flip?" And Michael has the camera, and he's like, and she said, "Just take this part and just point the camera and just," she said, "You know what you're doing? Do you know what you're doing? She's talking to Mike, like berating him. "Do you know how to do this? You want me?" And she's about to take the camera. Mike says, "No, I can figure it out." And he's got it, da. And she's got Michael taking pictures of her and Flip.
Oh my God.
I'll never forget that in my life. That woman screamed and ran up to Michael, gave Michael the camera, and told Michael to take pictures of her and Pops. And I'm sitting there going, and Pops got it there. He says, "I told you."
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the
Okay.
recorded version of this. We can stay on because I know the babies are going to be coming down and they're going to be noisy. So we're going to let you guys go. And we are going to definitely say thank you to Mr. Marcus Aurelius for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We love you. And good day for now. See you next time.
All right.
Yeah, it's over, baby. You said that you love me, you said that you care, you say that you will die for me, girl, but you know that it's hard air. I don't care what you say, I don't care what you do. No need to look to your left, girl, cause nothing belongs to you. Now you try me, you know you can't run them games on me. Now you creeping, I saw you stepping out with that G, yeah. Say what you wanna say, do what you wanna do, play how you wanna play. It's over, it's over, it's over, it's over. Say what you wanna say, do what you wanna do, play how you wanna play. It's over, you know it, you know it. No more playing with my mind, no more wasting all my time, no more telling all your girlfriends that you're spending every dime. You know you don't get nothing from me. It's time to set your whole heart free. Yeah. Say what you wanna say, do it.